This is NTD Evening News. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. President-elect Trump announcing his picks for the nation's top prosecutor, diplomat, and intel official. It comes as he vows to reform the Justice Department at home and implement a peace through strength agenda abroad. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more from West Palm Beach.
President-elect Trump is now back in West Palm Beach after meeting with President Biden at the White House. On Wednesday, he announced key picks for his incoming administration. For Attorney General, Trump passing over some of the more established attorneys whose names have been floated, announcing Congressman Matt Gaetz as his pick for the nation's top lawyer. In a statement, Trump praises Gaetz for pushing for reform of the DOJ, adding that Gaetz will end the weaponization of our justice system. Gaetz, 42, was a practicing lawyer for 2 years before becoming a lawmaker. He's among the most staunch supporters of Trump in Congress and has strongly criticized the Justice Department for its probe into Trump and for its treatment of whistleblowers.
And while we want to talk about the weaponization of the Justice Department, rightfully so, we write the check for it and we underwrite the debt for it. And it is sickening to me.
Trump on Wednesday also named Democrat turned Republican Tulsi Gabbard as his pick for the Director of National Intelligence. And Trump says Gabbard has a fearless spirit and enjoys broad support in both parties. Gabbard, a former candidate for the Democratic presidential nomination, has been campaigning for Trump in recent months. Trump also officially picked Senator Marco Rubio for Secretary of State, calling him a fearless warrior who will never back down to our adversaries. Rubio is known for his hardline stances on the Chinese Communist Party and has been an outspoken critic of the CCP's human rights abuses. In the coming days and weeks, Trump is expected to announce more picks for key positions, including the heads for transportation, labor, and energy departments. Reporting from West Palm Beach, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Today, President Biden and President-elect Trump met at the Oval Office, speaking on national security and domestic policy. They promised a smooth transition of power despite political differences. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more from the White House.
President Biden and President-elect Donald Trump had exchanged some good-hearted remarks in their first in-person meeting since June. They discussed offering a smooth transition of one administration to the next. Take a look.
Congratulations. We can make sure you're accommodated, what you need.
Politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate very much a transition that's so smooth. It'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that, Joe.
You're welcome.
Biden and Trump continued their meeting behind closed doors. Biden's Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, and incoming Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, joined. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said that the talks lasted 2 hours in the Oval Office.
They discussed important national security and domestic policy issues facing the nation and the world. President Biden also raised important items on Congress's to-do list for the lame duck session, including funding the government and providing the disaster supplemental funding the president requested.
President Biden is set to meet with world leaders, including China's Xi Jinping, this weekend at the APEC summit in Peru. At the White House press briefing, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was asked about the biggest threat facing the U.S. Sullivan mentioned China in his answer and added that the incoming administration is clear on this.
The competition with the People's Republic of China is going to be defining for what the world looks like over the course of the next 10, 20, and 30 years. And so that has got to be a paramount priority for the incoming administration. And the person who's been named as my successor, the person who's been floated as the Secretary of State, these are people who have very much focused on that challenge. And
Prior to this, Trump was up on Capitol Hill meeting with Republican lawmakers. Reporting from the White House, Jack Bradley, NTD News.
House and Senate Republicans held leadership elections as they prepare for full control of Congress. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez joins us from the Capitol with more on this story. Good evening, Luis. What can you tell us about the Senate Republican leadership elections?
Of course, Tiffany, earlier today, Senate Republican Conference held their leadership elections in the old Senate chambers in Capitol Hill. There was 2 rounds of votes and 3 candidates in that first round. It was Rick Scott versus John Thune and John Cornyn. Rick Scott only obtained 13 votes. That's only 3 more than he got back in 2022 when he challenged Mitch McConnell. In the second round, John Thune beat John Cornyn by 5 votes. That's 29-24. The magic number for the Senate Republican Conference was having more than 27 votes. Let's listen to some of the first words the new Senate Republican leader had to say after being elected. Let's listen to what Senator John Thune from South Dakota had to say.
We will do everything we can to process his noms quickly, get them installed in their position so they can begin to implement his agenda. We expect a level of cooperation from the Democrats to work with us to get these folks installed.
So, Tiffany, Senator John Barrasso was also elected as Senate Republican Majority Whip, replacing John Thune, who then got bumped to the Senate Majority Leader. And that, what we just heard from John Thune is his comments on recent appointments by President Trump and other nominations to his cabinet, and how his leadership will try and expedite those nominations, given the mandate that the president-elect has received in the ballots. Tiffany.
And Louise, a lot of news coming out of the House today, too. What can you tell us about the balance of power and the leadership races in the lower chamber of Congress?
Of course, well, right now I'm outside of the Hyatt Regency at Capitol Hill, where the House Republican Conference is gathered. And right now they're having their leadership elections. Today they also finally found out that they're holding on to the majority after Kevin Calvert of California won his race, securing that majority for Republicans. From what we could hear from outside of the room where the Republican House Conference is gathering, we could hear applause for Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and Majority Whip Tom Emmer, all 3 who were re-elected to their leadership positions for the 119th Congress. Now, Lisa McClain moved from House Republican Secretary to House Republican Conference Chair. We're still waiting to hear for the elections on the new House Republican Secretary and the new House Republican Policy Chair. But a very, very exciting day for House Republicans. We also had the news of President-elect Trump selecting Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida as his nominee for Attorney General. Mixed reactions here at the House Republican Conference in the Hyatt Regency at Capitol Hill. I spoke with Steve Scalise. He said he thought Matt Gaetz was a great pick. But then I also spoke with Ohio's Max Miller, and he said he couldn't wait to make some popcorn and watch senators, the FBI, and the CIA go through Congressman Matt Gaetz' background all the way back to when he was 18 years old. So a lot of news coming out of Capitol Hill, especially when it comes to the new leadership that Republicans will have in the 119th Congress, where they control all of Capitol Hill.
All right, Louise, thanks for those updates. The White House today saying the Ukraine war is among the major threats to global security as President-elect Trump returns to office. This comes as the State Department keeps racing to allocate more aid to Ukraine. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the latest, starting with an attack on Kyiv.
Russia on Wednesday launching its first missile attack on Kyiv since August. That's according to Ukrainian officials, who say the attack involved strategic bombers and ballistic missiles. Elderly women and small children taking shelter in an underground metro station.
The Kyiv region is always suffering. Kids can't go to school when drones are flying. And when there are missile attacks, we are seeking shelter.
The scale of the strikes and extent of any damage were not immediately clear. No casualties have been reported so far. And in D.C. on Wednesday, President-elect Trump met with President Biden. After the meeting, the White House suggested Trump should consider the Russia-Ukraine conflict to be one of the most serious global security threats as he returns to office.
You have an ongoing war of aggression by Russia against Ukraine, representing a larger threat to European security and therefore global security.
The White House also defended the aid it has sent to Ukraine, saying the U.S. also profits from it.
These aren't just dollars that we're picking up and shipping over to another country. They're dollars we're investing here in the United States in American jobs, producing American weapons that we send to Ukraine.
This comes as Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in Brussels on Wednesday to make sure Ukraine continues receiving aid from the US. Blinken says aiding Ukraine could have two possible outcomes.
Ensuring that Ukraine has the money, the munitions, and the mobilized forces to fight effectively in 2025, or to be able to negotiate a peace from a position of strength.
He added that the Biden administration will make sure to send all Ukraine aid allocated by Congress before January 20th. The White House previously said the same thing after President-elect Trump suggested he'll limit Ukraine aid once returning to office.
Every dollar we have at our disposal will be pushed out the door.
Also on Wednesday, Ukraine's Prime Minister announced that the country received a $1.3 billion grant from the US, saying that Ukraine will direct these funds toward essential humanitarian and social programs. Blinken also pledged that the US will continue to provide artillery, air defense, armored vehicles, and other needed capabilities and munitions to Ukraine. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
The Palestinian Islamic Jihad released a new video of an Israeli hostage, and that hostage's mother shared her thoughts after seeing it. NTD's Jason Perry has the latest on the war.
Israeli hostage Sasha Travanov appeared to be speaking under duress in this new video released by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist group on Wednesday. In the video, Travanov gave a warning to not try to rescue him in a military operation. He also said he misses his freedom and his family. Travanov's mother saw the video and said this.
My feelings are very mixed. On the one hand, I am very happy to see him alive and I see him talking. And on the other hand, I see that he is not in a good mental or physical state. I demand from all the decision makers to do everything for my son and all the hostages to come home.
There are still 101 hostages held in the Gaza Strip, and some are now hoping President-elect Trump will be able to help release them. Meanwhile, parts of Lebanon are starting to look more like the Gaza Strip as Israel launched more airstrikes around Beirut. Israeli forces on Wednesday said they targeted 9 weapon storage facilities and command centers used by Hezbollah terrorists around the city. A Lebanese resident shared his thoughts.
They used to hit Dahieh at night. Now they are doing it in daytime. Things are intensifying day after day. Could there be a ceasefire deal soon? It's possible, but the political news show that it's going to take a long time.
However, Israel's new defense minister, Israel Katz, said there would not be any ceasefires, and he reiterated Israel's goals in the war against Hezbollah.
Disarming Hezbollah, withdrawing it from beyond the Litani River, and mainly creating the true conditions for the residents of the north to return to their homes safely.
Meanwhile, Hezbollah terrorists continue firing rockets into northern Israel. The Israeli army said about 20 rockets were fired from Lebanon, some of which were intercepted, but at least one hit a house, although no injuries were reported. And in another development, U.S. government employee Asif William Rahman has been indicted for leaking classified national defense information. Federal court records do not say what information was leaked, but specified that the leak occurred on or around October 17th. And that was when alleged secret documents were discovered online about Israel's plans to attack Iran. Rahman was arrested in Cambodia on Tuesday and is expected to appear in U.S. federal court on Thursday. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Anger is mounting over Chinese authorities' handling of a fatal car attack that killed 35 people. Officials cleared flowers for the dead and censors removed posts about the incident. Officials are taking out the old playbook, playing down disasters and making it seem like nothing happened. And a warning, some viewers may find the following footage disturbing.
No news conference, scrubbing online posts about the attack, and almost a day to announce the death toll. This has been Chinese authorities' response to a fatal car accident. A man drove a car into a crowd Monday, killing 35 and injuring over 40 people. NTD can't independently verify that number as Beijing has a record of covering up death tolls. There's little coverage of the incident by state media. Some people took to the internet to criticize authorities' response and question what the attack means for Chinese society. China's censors were quick to remove those posts. Candles and flowers had been laid at the gate of the accident site. A Reuters reporter on the scene said the flowers were removed overnight. Security guards took over the wet side of the gate, blocking the site with metal barriers. Still, many kept dropping off fresh flowers.
It was just a spontaneous feeling that I had when I came to lay the flowers. Even though I didn't know them personally, it felt like those times when I had family members pass away in the past. So I kind of understand that feeling, and this is my feeling.
Local police have arrested the suspect, a 62-year-old who tried to stab himself following the attack. He's in the hospital now. Investigators say it seems he drove into the crowd out of anger over his divorce. This isn't a standalone incident. Another driver rammed into a crowd last year in a BMW, killing at least 6 people. Earlier this year, a Japanese schoolboy was stabbed on his way to school, and 4 American college instructors were stabbed in a park in northeastern China. Sheng Xue is a Chinese-Canadian journalist. She said the incident points to a bigger problem in society.
Similar incidents will erupt as the economy keeps going down. More and more people are growing desperate about their future. Plus, they might have encountered troubles in life, work, and in society, all while living under an extremely cruel authoritarian rule.
She added this forms a negative cycle, as some would vent their anger and grievance on other innocent citizens or those who are weaker than themselves.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Aliens and UFOs were the topics at a congressional hearing on Capitol Hill. The Special Oversight Committee says the goal is to give greater attention to UFO phenomena and uncover new information. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
UFO phenomena, aliens, and otherworldly technology were in the spotlight for a Special Oversight Committee in Washington, D.C. This is the second congressional hearing on the topic, following one in July 2023. Representative Nancy Mace was the chair for the meeting.
UAPs remain a controversial topic. I'm not going to name names, but there are certain individuals who didn't want this hearing to happen because they feared what might be disclosed.
During the meeting, instead of UFO, it was preferred to use UAP, which stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. There were witnesses and testimonies from the military and civilian government, as well as people in the science and journalism communities.
UAP are real. Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies.
Unfortunately, there is a growing body of evidence that the U.S. government is not being transparent about what it knows about unidentified anomalous phenomena, and that elements within the military and the IC are in violation of their constitutional duty to notify Congress of their operations.
Some expressed concern for how difficult it is to openly talk about the subject.
Members of the NASA UAP Independent Study Team, particularly those in academia, were mocked and even threatened for simply having the temerity to engage in the study of UAP.
Another hot topic was demanding more transparency on how much taxpayer money is being spent on projects related to UAPs.
The reality is, despite their enormous taxpayer-funded budgets, the transparency of the Defense Department and the intelligence community have long been abysmal.
There was also concern regarding advanced technology being used by enemies against the U.S. or our allies. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
And what do everyday Americans think about UAP, otherwise known as UFOs? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to survey the crowd.
So are you open to the possible existence of UAPs, otherwise known as UFOs?
Not really, no. I'm 73 years old and I haven't seen any evidence
yet. It's like ghosts. I don't think they exist.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been so much proof since the 50s.
I think it's possible that they're out there. I don't think we're that special that we're the only ones on this universe.
I think it's possible. I think there's some planet out there that we don't know about where there's like special like organisms like living out there.
Oh, I am absolutely 100% positive they do. I think there's multiple different types of aliens out there. I'm very excited that the government is finally coming out and being a little more open about that thing.
I just don't believe that there's other life out there that's coming into our planet.
No, the Pentagon earlier this year, they released a report showing that there's no evidence of extraterrestrial sightings. So do you buy that?
No, there's just too much proof in other countries and everything else, whereas it's not so much censored out there.
I think there's a lot of things that come through our skies that we're not quite sure what they are, but don't necessarily believe that that would be extraterrestrial life.
No evidence for aliens?
Yeah.
Cat, I think they're hiding it from us so like we don't freak out and start like destroying stuff.
No. I don't think they tell us everything that they know. I think there's stuff hidden from us.
I mean, it seems like people see things all the time. People recount experiences of being abducted.
We traveled a lot growing up and was at New Mexico, and you can see strange lights in the sky that nobody can explain. So you know how planes kind of fly in an up or down direction? When you're out there, especially on real clear nights, you can see them where they'll go back and forth, and then they can go straight up. I've never seen any planes do that.
Do you think there's enough transparency surrounding this disclosure, the possible disclosure of alien sightings?
No. I think that there's a lot more technology that they have in advance that there's probably out there, and we're just not, as the people should not, or they find that we should not know about those kind of technologies.
And I would have to believe that it's probably more for national security type purposes, where we have potentially foreign adversaries putting some unidentified objects through our airspace.
And I don't think really people could handle it if it came out.
The possibility of, people coming from another planet here, I think probably would freak everybody out.
Firefighters are making steady progress on the Jennings Creek wildfire along the New Jersey-New York border. The blaze is now 30% contained. Meanwhile, the mountain fire in Ventura County, California is now more than 50% contained, with many residents able to return to their homes. NTD's Christina Corona brings us the latest.
Officials from both states reported Wednesday that over 4,000 acres are burning, including 2,100 acres in New York and almost 2,300 in New Jersey. Fire officials provided an update on progress in containing the blaze.
Firefighting has been extremely difficult. Again, it's steep. We're in very steep, rugged terrain. Fire crews are going in there and attacking it by ground transport. So pretty much they're hiking their way in, and there's really no easy access. They're carrying all their equipment, tools, no real bulldozers.
He reports that wind gusts have been rising to speeds of 35 to 40 miles per hour.
So that is hampering our efforts to do significant suppression. So that's why we're not going super interior to attack the fire. However, we are in a place where we are actively engaging the fire. And right now, all our tactics seem to be holding the line here in New Jersey.
Franek says they're using satellite imagery, air surveillance, and on-ground surveys to map the fire more accurately, coordinating closely between the two states. On Tuesday, New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced a burn ban in the state, citing the need to focus on major fires. In California, the mountain fire has burned 20,630 acres and is now 60% contained. Currently, around 1,900 personnel are assigned to the incident, and many residents are now returning to their homes. Officials remind residents that crews will continue to be present in the area.
Crews will be in there today, gridding, patrolling, and communicating with the public as we move into the recovery phase.
Officials say warmer, drier conditions are expected Wednesday, with northeast winds gusting up to 30 miles per hour. Christina Corona, NTD News.
In California, energy company PG&E is working with a real estate company to innovate. Today, they announced plans to build a net zero community. NTD's David Lamb reports.
PG&E and Westbank announced plans to build a net zero community in San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley. The project will develop 3 new data centers and upwards of 4,000 residential units, announced at PG&E's Innovation Summit on Wednesday. PG&E will deliver around 200 megawatts of energy to the data centers.
Typically what data centers will do, they have a huge cooling load. That waste heat will just get vented to the atmosphere. What Westbank is going to do is they're going to be able to capture that waste heat and then take it and through a district energy system, be able to share that with the buildings, the new housing and other buildings that were within this area to provide hot water and heating, which allows those buildings to then reduce their natural gas usage.
The proposal would transform downtown San Jose by responding to demand for both artificial intelligence-driven data centers and housing.
Well, I think would be, or it's a better option nowadays for the people.
President-elect Donald Trump has said he plans to cut energy prices for Americans in half if elected. A spokesperson with PG&E said the company plans to work with California's energy goals. In San Jose, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
And joining us now to discuss Trump's new cabinet picks are two guests. Dante Mills is a political strategist as well as attorney and founding partner at Mills and Edwards. Bart Marcois is a former presidential campaign advisor, former U.S. diplomat, and former Deputy Assistant Secretary for International Affairs at the Energy Department. Bart and Dante, good to see you both again.
Hi, Tiffany. Hi, Dante.
Good to see you, Tiffany.
Hi, Dante. I want to start with you. What's been your reaction to these picks so far, especially Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Tulsi Gabbard for head of DNI, and Matt Gaetz for AG?
Here's what we know about incoming and former President Donald Trump. He's a man of his word. He said what he wanted to. He put his policy out there. People voted for it, and he's to advance that. You have to anticipate that in order to do that, he's going to put people in place that he knows is on board with his platform and has moved that forward. So that to me is not a surprise. The one knock that I have, though, is at some point, you can't just be a businessman. You do have to be political because you are in politics. And when you look at an appointment nomination like Gaetz, Matt Gaetz, he's going to be nominated for Attorney General, I think that's not paying attention to the room, right? You're not reading the room. To me, that's just putting it out there that you don't care what anybody else thinks around you. Yes, I expected him to appoint an attorney general that's going to move his agenda forward. But when you appoint someone for attorney general or nominate someone for attorney general who in fact has their own investigation active right now, who's been investigated for sex trafficking and having sex with a minor, he was under investigation for that, as well as obstruction of justice, and now he's nominated as the attorney general. I think that's a disservice to the office because it doesn't allow people to fully trust the office when that's their leader. And that, I think, is the problem. Not that he's putting people in place that's on his side, but you have to account for the personality of these people and how they're viewed, because you want the public to at least trust the process and trust in the system.
And Bart, what are your thoughts on these? Are these strong picks for the roles? There are definitely no names out there, but are they the ones you expected for these posts?
I did not expect some of these. I did not expect Matt Gaetz. I did not expect Pete Hegseth at DOD. I did not expect Kristi Noem at DHS. But I want to talk specifically about Gaetz. When I first came to Washington, or when I first was appointed as a political appointee, a good friend of mine took me aside and he said, "Listen, Bart, you need to understand that Washington is full of what I call smiling wolves. A wolf will bare its teeth right before it rips your throat out." And he said, "You're from the country where you come from. If you don't like somebody, you frown at them and you tell them you don't like them, and maybe you fight, and then you make things all right. But," he said, "in the city, and especially in Washington, if you don't like somebody, you come up, you smile at him, and you put him off his guard, and you make him feel at home." That's what happened to President Trump in his first term. Everybody used to love Donald Trump. He was in how many cameos in movies? He was always appearing on TV shows. Oprah Winfrey loved him. The ladies on The View loved him. Everybody loved him. He came to Washington, and suddenly he's Hitler. He's the devil incarnate. And he gets out of office, and he's pursued by lawfare, ridiculous charges, ridiculous cases, an absolute twisting and perversion of the law. And this appointment of Matt Gaetz is a recognition that he's saying, yeah, I read the room all right, and it's a big middle finger to the room. He is appointing somebody who also has been the victim of lawfare, of unfair investigations. Dante, he was under investigation. He's currently under investigation by the House Ethics Committee. The Justice Department dropped the investigation of him. They said there was no evidence to back up the claims, but the taint is still there. And this is a guy who, when he fights, he's going to fight hard, and he's going to fight for real, and he's going to make it count because he knows what it's like. He would not have been my pick, but I understand why President Trump picked him. He wants somebody who's going to fight for the rule of law, not to please the salons in Georgetown. And Matt Gaetz is a junkyard dog, and he's picked a junkyard dog. Merrick Garland was a junkyard dog, but he was very polite and kind about it. He's ripped the guts out of I don't know how many people.
Dante,
to use your phrase, he wasn't tainted, right? So he wasn't tainted. Bart, do you believe that there's a benefit to having a junkyard dog, somebody that's going to fight your fight? I have no issue with that. He won, President Trump won the popular vote. So clearly the American people want him to move his agenda forward. But I think having somebody that is tainted, I think that now could taint the office of the Attorney General, the Department of Justice. So why would you do that? That's my only concern.
I think that Matt Gaetz is only tainted in the eyes of people who will not look at what the charges were and what the disposition of the charges were. He has been completely cleared of the charges against him, and he knows what it's like to have charges brought unfairly. There are people that on the left side of the aisle that think President Trump is tainted because he has 34 felony convictions. But those convictions were every one of them was bogus in the charge, in the formation, in the prosecution, in the judge and the jury instructions and the picking of the jury. I mean, even to the point of scheduling a trial in New York so that the day off is Wednesday and not Friday, so there would be no place for Orthodox Jews to sit on a jury because he was popular among Orthodox Jews. I mean, that's how unfair the charges were against President Trump. And he's picked a guy who understands what it's like to have the full weight of the law brought against him, the full weight of the Justice Department brought against him. And Merrick Garland has done that to over 20, 30 people. I mean, there are people who have served jail time who have never committed a crime, but they were charged with crimes and they had to serve time in jail. George Papadopoulos, what's his name? Peter Navarro, Steve Bannon. These were people who were put in jail because they wouldn't comply with a subpoena from the Congress. And meanwhile, Hunter Biden.
But you have to, right? I mean, you can't just ignore the law and say that the
Hunter Biden ignored the law. Hunter Biden ignored a subpoena from Congress. Hunter Biden stood up.
We'll hold this conversation. Bart, hold that note, hold that thought. Dante, I want to get back to the picks here. So when it comes to these picks, one part that's getting a lot of attention is age. For instance, J.D. Vance and Vivek Ramaswamy, they're 39. Elise Stefanik, 40. Matt Gaetz, 42. Tulsi Gabbard is 43. Pete Hegseth and Lee Zeldin are 44. Now, critics are saying these picks are too young. Supporters say that the leadership so far has been too old for too long. Given that, though, Dante, what is your take on the age issue?
I don't think anybody is too young if they show that they have the ability to handle the job that they've been assigned. And I think that there are some smart picks in this cabinet that incoming President Trump has nominated. It is funny that we're having this, and Bart is a phenomenal person. We're having this exchange over cabinet picks, which normally doesn't happen. Usually cabinet picks are, the public they don't really pay attention to them. They just go in there and they do their job. I expect most of the cabinet selections to do that. I like that there are young people because they'll come in with fresh ideas. And I think that that's something that incoming President Trump promised to bring, some kind of new ideas to the White House. He wants to shake it up a bit. Hopefully he doesn't treat it like a business 100%, because the country is based on its people, not its bottom line. But we do want some new faces coming in with some ideas to push this forward and not just kind of doing the status quo or the same thing that's been done. So I like where most of these picks, the direction they're heading. Hopefully he just avoids these controversial picks that cause people to question these offices where he really doesn't have to do that. He can pick people that's going to get his agenda moving forward, but just not be tainted or not be so controversial.
And Barb, controversies aside on the age part, during our nation's founding and the Declaration of Independence back in 1776, Thomas Jefferson, 33, John Adams, 40, George Washington, 44, James Madison, 25, Alexander Hamilton, just 21. How do you read this return to tradition, if you will?
Yeah, I agree with Dante. The age is, these guys are at a good age. They're old enough to have been hurt, to have made mistakes, to have recovered, to have learned some tough lessons of life. And they're young enough to have tremendous energy. President Trump has tremendous energy, but he's a very unusual guy. But most people his age don't. He has picked people. He is saying, listen, the Republican Party, the Trump administration is an administration with energy, commitment, and he knows if he's going to get his agenda done, he's got essentially about 8 months to do it. He has to do it between January and August of next year, and he has to get it all done. And these are hard-charging people who are going to go forward and get it done in that first session of his first Congress.
All right, Dante Mills, Bart Marcois, thank you both so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this just in, Special Counsel Jack Smith has asked an appeals court to halt proceedings over President-elect Trump's classified documents case in Florida. Smith wants to assess how to proceed in the case now that Trump has been reelected, triggering a Justice Department policy against prosecuting a sitting president. Today's motion comes after Smith asked for a similar pause in the federal election case. This comes amid media reports that Smith plans to step down before Trump takes office. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A new report highlights transnational repression by Hong Kong with a particular focus on digital rights. Recent laws in the region have severely restricted Hong Kong residents with an impact that reaches far beyond its borders. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more from London.
Digital communications have played a key part of the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement, notably to share information between activists during the 2019 protests. But as human rights have declined in the region, so too has freedom of speech declined online, even going so far as arrests for simple Facebook posts made while Hong Kongers were abroad. A report published by Hong Kong Watch, titled Invisible Decline, looked at the impact of transnational repression and threats to digital rights. Hong Kong Watch co-founder Benedict Rogers said people are extremely cautious about what they post online.
As we know, the crackdown in Hong Kong has dismantled pretty much all of Hong Kong's freedoms, but what we don't hear enough about is the impact on digital rights. And basically the crackdown on in the digital space is very serious indeed.
23-year-old student Mika Yuan Qingting was arrested after returning to Hong Kong from studying in Japan. During her time in Japan, she made a number of social media posts which the Hong Kong police force described as inciting Hong Kong independence. She was prosecuted under the 2020 national security law and sentenced to 2 months in prison. The report said Yuan's case sent shockwaves and led many people to close social media accounts and self-censor for fear of repercussions, and not just for themselves.
There's a real risk that if somebody who's outside Hong Kong puts something in the digital sphere that the authorities don't like, that can have repercussions for their family members back home who may experience harassment, intimidation, or worse.
There have also been rulings that impact international digital companies. The Hong Kong Justice Department banned the popular pro-democracy anthem Glory to Hong Kong. Following a legal battle, in May this year the song was removed from streaming platforms Spotify and Apple Music. Not just in Hong Kong, but everywhere across the world, despite the song only being banned in Hong Kong. These are 2 examples, but they highlight how the ability to peacefully criticize the Hong Kong government has been repressed on a transnational level. The report makes policy recommendations.
One of the major recommendations is to hold the technology companies accountable, so where they do comply or cave into pressure to restrict digital rights.
He said companies should be called into Parliament in the UK, Congress in the US, or other similar institutions in other nations so that the companies explain themselves to governments. Rogers added that targeted sanctions should be imposed on Hong Kong officials who infringe upon the freedoms of Hong Kongers. And the report also recommends to improve social media safeguards to ensure these platforms are not used for transnational repression. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, London.
The historic 50th home run ball hit by baseball superstar Shohei Ohtani of the Los Angeles Dodgers was unveiled today. It was displayed for public viewing at Taiwan's landmark Taipei 101 Tower.
This ball marks a significant milestone in baseball history. Ohtani stands alone as the only player to achieve 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in a single season. He reached the milestone on September 19th this year. The ball was sold at a recent auction for a record-breaking amount of nearly $4.4 million. It is now the most expensive baseball ever sold at auction.
I hope that the exhibition of Shohei Ohtani's 50th home run ball can bring more dreams and hopes to children in Taiwan. I hope that this commemorative ball would be able to expand future exchanges between Japan and Taiwan.
The exhibition was made possible by Taipei 101.
I hope this historic ball can create more opportunities for exchanges between Taiwan and Japan and allow all baseball-loving fans around the world to come to Taipei 101 Tower in Taiwan to see this exhibition.
The display has attracted visitors from across the world.
Just came here by chance. I was actually showing my mom around Taipei this week, and so today was her last day in Taiwan, and I was like, we gotta go to Taipei 101. Had no idea this was gonna happen, and just kind of stumbled upon it. And it's really kind of amazing because we're both from California.
I am really happy to see this historic ball in Taiwan.
Although it is just a ball, its existence has great significance to me. But I think Shohei's health is the most important thing.
Ohtani's 50th home run ball will be on display at the Taipei 101 Tower through March next year. It offers baseball fans and visitors an opportunity to witness a piece of sports history.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.